Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Ramesh, and this is my first presentation under a research loading dose platform. And I will be giving a series of presentations on various statistical topics in coming weeks. So stay tuned. Let's begin our presentation. Today's presentation is mainly focusing on the Cronbach alpha and how are we going to implement in cross-sectional studies. Let's begin our presentation. This is the outline of my presentation. I will be talking briefly on the cross-sectional studies and why they are important in our research. Then I will talk about what is a Cronbach alpha and how are we going to implement it. And then finally, I will be concluding my presentation. So cross-sectional study designs can be conducted in any field such as epidemiology, sociology, psychology, or medicine. The cross-sectional studies are usually conducted to collect data at a single point in time from a representative sample of a population. These type of studies are usually aimed to provide a snapshot of a particular population characteristics, behaviors, or conditions at a specific moment without following them over an extended period of time. Cross-sectional studies are useful for generating hypotheses, assessing the need for further research, and identifying trend or pattern in population. They are commonly used in public health to assess the prevalence of a particular disease, in social sciences to study the behaviors, and in marketing to understand the customer preferences. Let's talk about what are the important factors involved in cross-sectional studies and how we can implement it. The most important factor involved in cross-sectional studies, not only in cross-sectional studies but in other studies, is about formulation of study objectives. But in cross-sectional studies, most of the times the study objectives are are based on the prevalence of a specific characteristics or conditions within a population. And the definition of study populations are also very important, not only in cross-sectional studies, but in other studies also, in other study designs. So when it comes to cross-sectional study designs, the study populations are not very special, but the approach would be like, we need to select the sample in such a way that the samples are true representative of our overall population of interest. And also we need to be very much clear on the data collection approach, how exactly we are going to collect the data and what method would be used. For example, are we going to use a survey-based approach or questionnaire, or are we going to interview participants, or we are going to have some kind of physical examinations. So data collected, in cross-sectional studies can be quantitative or qualitative in nature. Although I'm not going to talk on the type of data here because that is out of scope of these presentations. The next part is about the snapshot in time. In cross-sectional studies are usually conducted on a single point in time. So unlike longitudinal studies where group of individuals are followed over a specific period of time. But in cross-sectional studies, we collect data at a single time point, which makes cross-sectional studies very easy and cost-effective. And once we are done with the data collection approach, then it comes how we are going to summarize the data. In cross-sectional studies, most of the times we use prevalence to summarize data. Uh, and cross-sectional studies have some limitations. The most important limitation is on the temporal relationship. Since data is collected at single point in time, it is very challenging to determine the sequence of event or establish any kind of relationship between outcome or exposure. And this type of studies are usually comes with the selection bias and recall bias. So in summary, I would say cross-sectional study designs is valuable for capturing a snapshot of a population characteristics, behaviors, or conditions at a specific point in time. However, it has limitations, particularly in establishing any temporal relationship between exposure and outcome, which may be very much important, to understand the impact of a particular disease on the exposure. So this is all about the introduction on the cross-sectional study designs and how we can implement such designs. Let's talk about our next topic, which is implementation of Cronbach alpha and what is a Cronbach alpha. So before I talk about the Cronbach alpha and how we are going to implement Cronbach alpha, let's talk about briefly on the measurement instruments. What are these and why it is very much important. So measurement instruments are basically a tool or method which is used to collect data about a specific variable or constructs of interest within a sample population at single point in time. These instruments are crucial for obtaining accurate and reliable information for research purposes. Measurement instruments typically consist of multiple items or questions meant to measure a specific construct. This could be a questionnaire assessing attitude, behavior, or psychological traits. And these are the most common types of measurement instruments, which are questionnaire and survey, test and assessments, observation instruments, biological and medical measurements, rating scale and inventories, environmental and contextual assessments. Although I'm not going into the detail of these all types of measurement instruments. So in nutshell, I would say that measurement instruments uh, can be a collection of multiple items or questionnaires which are developed in such a way to measure a specific objective. They can be a questionnaire assessing attitude, behavior, or psychological traits. Okay, so now let's go to the next slide. Okay, let's talk about the Cronbach alpha. What is a Cronbach alpha? So Cronbach alpha is a measure of internal consistency, most often used in cross-sectional studies to assess the reliability of scale or questionnaire used to measure a specific variable of interest. And this is not a measurement instrument. It's basically a statistical measure which is used to assess the internal consistency or reliability of measurement of a particular set of items uh, to measure to assess a study objective. Let's see how we can implement the Cronbach alpha. So in the next slide, I would be talking about the implementation part. So the implementation of Cronbach alpha requires following steps. So in order to implement this, we need to be very much sure that we are using a validated questionnaire, which is nothing but the selection of a measurement instrument. So we need to be very much clear, like what questionnaire we are using and was it properly constructed. And then once we are done with the selection of measurement instrument, the next step is a data collection. So the data collection could be collection of responses from the participant for each item in the instrument, which is nothing but the questionnaire, and we need to make sure that data is coded and recorded accurately. And once we are done with the data collection, next step is about the data preparation. So we need to organize our data so that we have responses for each item of a measurement instrument for each participant, and they are properly coded. And once we are done with the data coding, that means the data preparation step is completed. The next part is about calculation of Cronbach alpha statistics. So we can use SPSS, R, Python, SAS softwares can be used to calculate Cronbach alpha statistics. This statistics is basically quantifies the internal consistency of items and indicate how closely these items uh, are related as a group. So basically it will assess the internal consistency of your questionnaire. And let's say that after calculation of Cronbach alpha, we found that our statistics is close to 1. So what does that mean? So the Cronbach alpha value closer to 1 indicates high internal consistency, suggesting that the items in your questionnaire are reliable in measuring the study objective. And the Cronbach alpha value below zero point 0.7 may indicate low internal consistency, suggesting that some items in the instrument may need to revised or removed to improve reliability of your questionnaire. And the next step could be, once we know that our internal consistency is quite low, then we can think about revising the instrument, which can be done by either removing the items from your questionnaire or adding new items to improve reliability. And finally, we can report the Cronbach alpha in our results section of a research paper or in your report. So basically we need to report the calculated Cronbach alpha along with the brief interpretation of its significance. And also we need to be more elaborative on the revision of your questionnaire. We need to define the steps, like how did we revise the instrument after seeing the Cronbach alpha statistics. So those all steps we need to define it in our results section, and we need to report accordingly. So in conclusion, I would say that Cronbach alpha is a very valuable tool for any researcher to ensure that their measurement instruments are reliable, and that the items within those instruments or questionnaires are measuring the same underlying construct consistently. It is widely used in various fields such as psychology, education, health sciences, and social sciences to assess the quality of data collected through surveys or questionnaires in cross-sectional studies and also in other research study designs. And thank you for your time for listening these presentations. Thank you all. Bye. Have a good day.